idea to choose your settings. So typically for biological samples, 5 kV is a good starting point, so you can just pick 5 kV from this drop-down menu here. This beam setting determines essentially how large the beam is when it's scanning across the sample. 80 is quite large, which means that you'll get lower resolution. So let's try something maybe more like 40. Should give a decent result. Working distance, somewhere between 12 and 15 millimeters is kind of the starting point for when you first put the sample in. So it's okay. So we should be ready to start up the microscope or turn on the beam. So to do that, just hit this HV button here, which stands for high voltage. And then, so you have a number of different scan speeds here. Usually when you're just searching around your sample and trying to find something to focus on, TV rate is a good one to use, so I'm just going to click that TV button. So you have this control panel here. You have contrast and brightness adjustments. But if you see nothing, to get a good starting point, there's an auto brightness and contrast, which is this ABC button right here. So you just click that. It's going to adjust itself.
Whoa.
So now we're starting to get something here. Usually what I do to start off with to find the sample is just reduce the magnification as much as possible.
There's something there.
Where do you put it?
A brush.
Oh.
Okay, so you got a big magnification knob here which zooms in and out. So you can see we've got something here. The way you move the sample around is with these two knobs here. So you can, one of them moves the sample up and down, the other one moves it left to right. So then you just find a feature that looks interesting, or something that you want to, some specific part that you want to image. So, somewhere around here. Then you want to zoom in. And now you can see right now it's quite blurry, so we do some focusing.
So cool.
Like you did something, right?
Yeah.
So now you can get a look at the surface
See
of
all
your...
the hyaline cells and the fibrils and the pores. Whoa! Oh
So-
my gosh, that's so cool.
but you can see, even though it's pretty cool looking, like the brightness and the contrast, like some things are extremely white and sort of oversaturated, we would call that. So you can adjust it again with the brightness and contrast button knobs here, because you want to get, so you want the darkest part of your sample to just be black, and you want the brightest part to be just white, and not too much in between. Like you don't want large areas that are completely white or completely black, because then you're losing information. So you can play around with these brightness and contrast knobs here to get it looking the way that you want, or again you can also hit this auto brightness contrast button. It usually does a pretty reasonable job, but sometimes you might look at it and go, ah, that's not quite right. Fine tune it a little bit with contrast and brightness.
What is it? The pore? So cool.
So when you start zooming in farther and farther, if you try to move the sample with these knobs at higher magnifications, it moves a lot. So you also have these two image shift X and Y knobs, and that will move the image in a more controlled way, but you only get a certain amount of movement before it sort of reaches a stop and won't move any further. So if you look down here, there's these little crosshairs, and when I move these shift buttons, it tells you when you're at the limit. So. But these are good for finding specific features at higher magnifications to focus on.
What is the highest magnification?
This one I think goes to maybe 100 or 200,000. It also depends. So I guess around 100,000, depending on the working distance as well. A shorter working distance will give you a higher magnification as well. So. The other thing you might notice as you zoom in a lot,
it doesn't focus very well.
yeah, partially that, and also let's see here. It's actually not too bad right now, but as I go through focus, if you look at some of these features, you'll see when it starts to get blurry, things sort of smear in one direction, and then if you go through the other way, they kind of smear the other way. That's called astigmatism. So we have these two knobs here that are called stigmators, and if you focus the image as best as you can, and then adjust stigmators, you can usually improve the image if you keep going back and forth between focus and stigmator. And I usually just adjust one at a time. It's easier to keep track of. So it's not a lot better, but it's slightly clearer than it was before. And this is a little bit better defined here. But the work that you guys are doing probably won't need to worry about that too much. But if you're imaging your sample and it looks awful and you can't really see any structures, then that might be one of the problems. You can come and find us and we can help you with that as well.
Wow.
So then, when you're ready to capture an image, you want to go into the slow scan mode. Slow 3 is going to give you a pretty good approximation of what your final image will look like. So you'll see when you switch between slow scan and TV rate, there'll be a bit of a shift in the image. So watch now and then here. So if we look at, so this little notch here kind of lines up with the 9 in TV rate, and then if we switch to slow, it'll probably be in a different spot. Yeah, see it's over here now. So that's one thing to be aware of when you're trying to frame an image. It shifts a little bit. So say you're happy with this and you want to capture the image, you just push this button here. I don't really know what the M or the H stands for, but it captures your image.
Love it. the higher scan speed give you like higher resolution?
Higher scan speed actually tends to give you less signal because the beam moves faster over the sample. So they can be a little bit more noisy, but 200 seconds for what you guys are doing is kind of excessively long. You'll be sitting here for a long time waiting for each of your images to capture. 80 seconds is what we use most of the time. So let's try that again.